Which rookie tight end might be getting slept on by FFPC players? Which AFC West offense is due for a big 2025? And who's the proper backup running back in the Rams offense that you want to be in business with this season? Plus the 12-time FFPC League champion and 2025 FFPC Bros versus Joe's drafter, Jason Camp, will hang out with us to break down his strategy in this year's competition, how Jordan Addison's potential suspension is affecting how he's drafting him, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Under pressure, I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome into the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to break down the RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins battle, who to target, who to fade in the Jacksonville backfield, and 12-time FFPC League champion 2025 FFPC Pros versus Joe's Jason Camp will join us to lead our discussion tonight about Hunter Henry, Javonte Williams, and so much more. If you want to connect with us on X, you can do so at HSFF at Eric Balkman. Of course, learn more about Ferrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFF. You can also email the show at the highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com email address. If you have any questions for us or for Jason, now's the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails coming up in the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend Rob. I want to let everybody know that there's a lot going on with the FFPC right now, including but not limited to the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, a $1 million grand prize at stake. You're going to get a $50 discount on every third team. Drafts are already running now. The 7 Bananas promo is live. We've now given 20 best ball teams, free best ball teams, and 2 free FFPC main event teams to teams that keep getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row. You can check that out at myffpc.com. And while you're there, register for the main event. It's our flagship event, another $1 million grand prize, $6 million plus prize pool, slow and live drafts running right now as well. So check that out at myffpc.com. Remember, if you have your teams fully paid for by July 27th, you're going to get your early draft slot on August 3rd. I know Nick Costantino from the Go Bills franchise was in the Insider Access YouTube chat last night. And he said, well, Balky, what about these drafts that are scheduled to go off before July 27th? Well, you don't get your early draft spot on that. Once they fill, you'll get an email. That's your draft slot. So that's how you find out where you're drafting in those. The FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments going on at myffpc.com. A $300,000 and $100,000 grand prize up for grabs in those. $100,000 runner-up prize in the Best Ball tournament as well. You can enter for $125 or $35 respectively in those two tournaments. 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks available for those competitions. And don't forget about Dynasty Startup Drafts. Entry fees range from $100 all the way up to $5,000, 2,000 plus leagues, and none have ever folded in 15 years. So myffpc.com is where to go for that. Remember to like, subscribe, comment on this video, share this with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Want to bring in the co-host with the most. You know him from the KFFSC. He runs that, everything that's going on with the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. And so glad to spend another Friday night with this dude, as I'm sure you are too, as well as Oinker too. Oinker is very excited to welcome this guy on, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, welcome in, man.
Hey, brother, how are you? It was such an impressive lead-in, Balky, that I missed you so much. I sent you a text just to tell you how much I missed you. You can look at your text stream, and it'll prove.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Yes, I got the best email tonight. Grandpa Bullet Bob Hogan, tough muscular, impressive individual, and he has grandkids, and he just melts into a little malleable kind of life form there. But he sent me an email. He's playing our best ball championship with his grandson, they're just together having the best time. So I really love this time of year before we get into it, and the main events and the travel to Paris Hotel and Casino on the Strip. I really it's just a great time of year.
It is a great time of year, and it's fun because we're kind of making up our own narratives right now when we draft, which can be kind of fun because there's not a lot of news coming out with the
but
NFL
they're not
right
fictional. Even though we're making them up, they're not.
No,
fictional.
We're telling
really
ourselves a story.
believe.
They are factually based stories that we're telling each other to tuck us into bed at night. And
you
and
are
one of those,
aren't you?
and one of those, one of those stories as we lead things off from the Florida Times Union. This was the story that Demetrius Harvey told us this week about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Etienne, dude ended last season as the lead running back for the Jaguars. And because we start drafting in January, we have buried this guy 6 feet under, probably back in May after Michelle Tootin got drafted. And now all of a sudden he's making a comeback here in late June because Demetrius Harvey says Etienne is expected to remain the team's top back, but he could take, quote, a bit of a backseat as a rusher as the team's running game and his receiving ability evolve. Okay. Harvey went on to say in this story that this competition will include not only Etienne, but Michelle Tootin, Tank Bigsby, and LaQuint Allen, the other rookie running back that Jacksonville drafted. He listed those players in that order. I don't think that that's any surprise. It's not alphabetical order. It is reverse alphabetical order, but I think the order he listed them in is an order of importance in the backfield. If the Jaguars truly are going to go a running back by committee route, it's going to feature at least 3 of these guys. It's going to be problematic. However, Etienne, while he wasn't a big pass catcher in college, it seems like he is starting to pick that game, part of his game up faster and faster. Farrell, if we look at the Jacksonville running backs and how they're drafted in the Gorilla, as you call it, the FFPC, the Gorilla, which, by the way, the ADP that we're getting is from fantasymojo.com, at FantasyMojo on X. Darren Armani, the godfather of the Pros versus Joe's Challenge. He runs this. Anytime we cite the ADP, it's coming from his website. Strongly urge you to get a Fantasy Mojo membership if you are playing in the FFPC. Jacksonville running backs, Etienne, 809, Michelle Tootin, 1001, Bigsby at the 1210, and LaQuint Allen not being drafted. So those top 3 guys kind of bunched up, Farrell. Do you have a favorite out of those 3 right now?
I have a favorite. His name is Trevor Lawrence, and if you can return to his 2022 production, all these running backs will flourish. The support for Travis Etienne amongst fantasy players, even before the draft, I think he was evanescent, transitory, temporary at best. And then the draft came. This team has nowhere to go but the proverbial direction of up. It will depend on the quarterback's ability to move the ball down the field, which he hasn't shown that in a couple years. You got to put these guys in some down and distance situations where they can score touchdowns. It's team football. It hasn't gone well for the quarterback in the last few years. Consequently, the backfield has suffered as well. Rookie or not, unless the offense tunes up and the quarterback returns to success, it's going to be another long year to own Jacksonville Jags.
So are you, do you have so I guess the pivotal player here is Trevor Lawrence for you. Which side are you falling in on that? Do you think he recaptures or gains some magic this year and really pilots this offense? Or are you betting on the side of fading the Jaguars by and large?
I want to examine it more in a preseason. I think with all the coaching changes there, I think his reset and his head is in the right direction. And based on where these running backs are going, I'm willing to take a risk and say that it is. You got to remember that everyone valued this quarterback when he entered the league, and he's had a rough patch, but I don't think his skill set is gone. New coaches, new opportunity. Let's see what happens. But it's, it's something needs to be shown this year there.
It's weird that, I think I'm still team Tootin here because it is one of those running backs that you get later on in the draft. And I don't want to necessarily draft for floor, which I think is what ETN is there. ETN at the 809, that's still almost a round and a half ahead of Tootin. So I like Tootin there. I like him more than Bigsby. He's the mystery box. And unlike what he was going for in early May, Ferrell, you don't have to pay that price anymore. He's fallen a little bit. And I
appreciate writer Demetrius Harvey. He wins the Captain Obvious Award of the week. If he's reporting on July 4th, he's probably going to talk about parades and fireworks and maybe even hot dogs.
That's entirely possible, 100%. Let's move on and talk about the New York Jets here. Aaron Glenn, the new head coach there, said that Mason Taylor, their rookie tight end, is doing an outstanding job as a blocker. He also, before this, talked about how well Mason Taylor is at catching the ball away from his body and how quick he's getting north and south after the catch this year. So this is good on both sides. You want to know that he's a good blocker. You want to know that his head coach is praising him for the receiving aspect of the tight end position as well. Among the tight end positions receptions last year in the league, nearly 2,800 of them, 30% were caught via play action. And obviously this is something that the Jets want to do. This is something that Aaron Rodgers did not like doing with New York. and clearly Mason Taylor is going to have the opportunity to be a very successful player this year. If I remember correctly, Ferrell, Steven Yurgalos, who has been on this show before, less than a month ago, I think, has been in some KFFSC drafts with me. I'm not saying this with a undoubted lock of certainty. It seems like he grabs Mason Taylor in like every draft I'm in. He's always grabbed him. Tight end 23 at the 13-10 right now. I think, especially if you go elite tight end, you grab one of the top 5. I think Mason Taylor looks real nice, Clark, as a backup tight end for you this year.
Yes, and here we've got another SEC tight end joining the league, one that is the most prolific pass catcher in LSU history amongst the tight end positions. Certainly the family heritage there of father Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas, uncle. This guy's a football lifer, and he just turned 21 years old. I think that he was a steal for the Jets in the second round, and if you can draft him in the FFPC in the 13th round, you're stealing him too. And I'm not saying he's going to be Brock Bowers, but he's done all the same things that Brock Bowers has done over at Georgia. In the Southeastern Conference, and they're not hurting for weapons at LSU, but they found a way to get this guy a ball, and that just wasn't circumstance or incidental.
I want to. We're going to get to Jason Camp here in a second. Before we do, I want to get into this R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins discussion. I know we've touched on this before, Ferrell, but Nick Kosmider, excuse me. And Nick, I apologize if I'm butchering this. I know Nick's watching right now. He never misses an episode. But he believes that R.J. Harvey is still going to be a significant part of the offense, even after the acquisition of J.K. Dobbins. He did one of these mailbag columns for The Athletic where people were asking him questions about the Broncos, and somebody asked him about the impact that J.K. Dobbins is going to have on R.J. Harvey this year. Kosmider said he welcomed the opportunity to, quote, dispel this narrative. And he also said in this mailbag, quote, if anything, Harvey has exceeded expectations during his early days in Denver. And certainly Dobbins will have a role. But bear in mind that if the Broncos really wanted Dobbins, they could have signed him prior to the NFL draft and prior to drafting R.J. Harvey. As you have so eloquently pointed out with a lot of players, Ferrell, that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, this is going to be one of those things that's going to be much more interesting when we get to training camp and seeing how these things shake out right now. But I think the death of R.J. Harvey after J.K. Dobbins was signed has been largely overrated. Now, when we look at the mojo on these guys and look at how Denver running backs are being drafted, we see McLaughlin as running back 86. We see Estime as running back 77. Dobbins is 42. And R.J. Harvey still running back 21. He is going at the 506. Dobbins is going 5 rounds behind him at the 1007. In your humble opinion, are FFPC players playing this Denver backfield right at the moment to be taking Harvey 5 rounds ahead of J.K. Dobbins?
I really love Harvey, so the answer might be that he should go where he's going and that Dobbins should be elevated as your handcuff. I think what everybody here is buying into the fact of what we just said about Lawrence and Jacksonville. Those teams are responding to the young quarterback, his maturity, and the ability of the team to be to play better. They're a year ahead of where Jacksonville needs to be in this upcoming season. So it's difficult because if you start picking 2 of these guys, and some guy told me on the phone, I didn't give much credence to it, but he told me Estimate could be out of there. And I really like Harvey. So I'm going to go ahead and draft him where I have to draft him. And I think a lot of those drafters are probably going 0 running back, and they're coming in with Harvey as their guy. I think that's might be what's happening here.
I want to touch on one more thing real quick before we get to Jason Camp. Zach Kiefer from The Athletic, who covers the Chiefs there, said that we should look for more emphasis on explosion from Kansas City's passing game this year. Andy Reid apparently during the spring made it a real point for the Chiefs to be pushing the ball downfield, something that they got away from for sure last season and maybe a little bit in 2023 as well. Since 2021, Mahomes has been 21st or worse in ADOT, and he finished 6th in ADOT, bear in mind, in 2018 when he had 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, 12 picks, won his first MVP that year. That's when he had athletic and young Travis Kelce. That's when he had athletic and young Tyreek Hill. Now he gets Xavier Worthy, who we know can get it done vertically as well as in the intermediate game. Rashee Rice, I don't think anybody would say is a field stretcher, but I believe you brought this to our attention before. Hollywood Brown could still get it done. He's still fast, and now they're going to have 2 guys that could really be lid lifters on this offense. I don't know if this is a conversation about, hey, should we be looking at Hollywood Brown late? Should we like taking Worthy over Rashee Rice? I think this is more of a question, Ferrell. Do we need to pump up Patrick Mahomes on our draft board? Because He is going well outside the top 5, and then there's a deep yawning chasm between Burrow and Mahomes. It's like 2.5 rounds based on where these guys are going. He needs to be going higher.
And we had some guys in the chat room talking about how Mahomes has struggled with fantasy points in the last 2 years, and he has. But he's also been hurt. He's had some other situations around him. I think this is the year that he brings it together. And drafters will tell you what round has Darren got him going in? What's the report?
For the mojo on who?
Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla, quarterback 6 at the 802.
If you can get Patrick Mahomes that late in the draft all day long. I'll go back, Booger Freeman checked in when we were having our conversation about the Denver backfield, and he is correct. Coach Payton, we know what it's going to be. You have to be Alvin Kamara to get the majority of the touches. It's running back by committee. And so, that's a very good point. But I love Kansas City. There's a lot of players to get the ball to, and they got the right quarterback to get it to them. You're going to get fantasy points out of Kelce. It'll be interesting. The most interesting thing to see from a fantasy perspective is how the backfield works itself out. And Worthy is going to be exciting to watch.
He is going to be exciting, and we can't wait to see what happens with this Chiefs offense. And we won't be waiting long, Ferrell, because I think we're only, what is it, June 27th? We're less than 3 months away. I mean, it's like 8 or 9 weeks, something like that, away from the start of the NFL season, which I know you can't wait for. I can't wait for it either. And I'll tell you one other guy who can't wait for it is tonight's guest on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring him in right now. This is a player who has 12 league titles to his name in the Fantasy Football Players Championship. He's looking to add some more this year, including but not limited to winning the $1 million in the FFPC Main Event. You can watch him draft on this here channel on YouTube. when we cover the Pros versus Joes drafts coming up in about a month or so. You follow him on the X at jcamp2323. Please welcome into the program tonight the Pros versus Joes drafter himself, Mr. Jason Camp. Jason, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it, guys. How are you?
We're doing good, man. How pumped are you to find out that you were selected as a Joe in Pros versus Joes this year?
Oh, it was awesome. And, you can tell, and my history. I've been with the FFPC for a long, long time. And watching this, I was like, hey, man, when am I going to get my number? But it finally came up. So it's great because, I know I compete against some of these guys in some of the high stakes as it is. So it's nice seeing it. I haven't been able to go out to Vegas yet, so I'm kind of at a far over in Kentucky when I'm doing my draft. The live drafts, and those guys are out there in some of the high stakes and all that. But playing for the $1 million in the main event, it's awesome. So I'm really pumped to do this next month. It's going to be awesome.
That will be fun. When you are, and I think I know what you're talking or what you're going to say here, but I want you to open this up. When you're not winning all these FFPC leagues, what are you doing for a living?
Yeah, it's crazy. I kind of told you a little bit offline, but I grew up in Miami and was, a huge fan from there. Went to the University of Florida and actually had 18 years in professional sports. I worked for the Marlins for 3 years, right at their inception. I worked for Dolphins.
And you got the ring, right? The World Series ring?
I did. I got a World Series ring in '97 with those guys coming right out. It was an unbelievable experience. And then I worked for the Dolphins and helped produce the Super Bowl in 1999. Then I went over to the Panthers and helped them build and open that new arena that they just won their second cup in. So they hardly won it all when I was there, but it was great to see him win for a second time. And then I was actually on the PGA Tour as a tournament director for a long time. And then I kind of stepped away from sports after that and wanted to be a dad and raise my kids and coach football and baseball and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of opened my own event firm and, but I've been doing fantasy football since I was 16 years old. And I drafted Michael Irvin in 1988 in his rookie year, and that's how long it goes back. So back in the day, guys, you remember when you were pulling out the newspaper and writing it all down on a little sheet of paper and doing your own calculations in those home leagues. So it's from there to what I'm doing now with you guys. It's been a great run. And, this is my hobby. I kind of mentioned before, I am in Kentucky over in Ashton on the other side from Louisville. And my wife and I bought a dead mall and turned it into an entertainment district. And it's going great. So we're, changing a bunch of different stuff over there. We got a casino, movie theater, a Malibu Jacks, and it's great. But fantasy football is my escape and my getaway.
So if we can promote this a little bit, I went to camplanding.com to check this out when I saw it. Wow. I was blown away. Like all the stuff that's going on at that place. You got mini golf, movie theater. You have just like this massive arcade. You got everything going on there. That is a pretty cool operation. Camplanding.com for any, and I'll put the link in the chat here so anybody can check that out. And then what is tapthatsports.com?
So that's something that we created. It's basically a golf simulator bar. So we've got 8 HD sports suites, not only where you can play the top golf courses in the world, but you can play baseball, football, kick field goals, strike out batters, hockey, soccer. So it's a whole interactive sports bar. But I also have a pour my beer tap wall where you go in and get your RFID card or bracelet and then go down the line and just try all the sampling wall. And we kind of combine those two technologies together. And it's the first time we've seen it, but it's our own brand and something we came up with. So tapthatsports.com, go check it out and get some of our shirts and hats. And, we're looking at expanding and opening one in Nashville with my buddy Roy Lake that I used to work with the Marlins. So we're going to put another location down there in Nashville where it's all happening. So looking at other cities to go and build them. So it's great.
Yeah, so when people come out for this, do they ever go home? Do you get rid of them when they come? I mean,
well, there's a casino there also, and there's a horse track.
That's what I'm saying. Do they ever go home?
We're building an indoor sports complex because we wanted to have some more court space for the youth to play junior basketball and volleyball and all that kind of stuff as a way to give back. So it's a dream come true for me to do something like this with my wife and put it all together and bring something back to the community. So we only bought the Dead Mall. It was just 4 years ago, July 15th. And we've been able to build it up to where it's almost completely full. So it's been a great run.
It sounds like it would be the perfect location for a satellite draft from the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. What do you think, Balky? It sounds like that's exactly.
Absolutely agree with you. And actually, we're gonna take some of those simulators because we'll play the Super Bowl on them. You can play sports and all that, and they're the huge 17-foot wide, 12-foot tall screens. And we're actually going to host fantasy football league, so you can come in there and in your own private room, have the tap wall, beer wall, and actually draft on the big screen, kind of like your own draft war headquarters.
I can already see, Balky, that we're going to have to slow things down here and negotiate the word exclusive into this.
But you could do that, or we already got KFFSC in Louisville. We have KFFSC in Northern Kentucky. Now, KFFSC in Eastern Kentucky. I'm down. We can make it happen.
Well, I tell you what, you haven't been to Las Vegas, and you're the one player who's come on the show that I think we can give a pass to for not being able to come live. Balky, with this schedule that this man has, can we give him a pass on not showing up live? I think we can.
I'll give him a pass, but I think he wants to come.
You've accommodated you've let us know that you're spending your time wisely. Now, if you can answer this question properly, you should come to Las Vegas. You should come to Kentucky. And you should come everywhere fantasy football is being played, because I think this is the biggest mystery in sports this year. Aaron Rodgers to Metcalf. Can you see it happening?
It's I'll tell you what. You know how Rodgers is. He picks his target. He throws the ball just when he, stuffs those targets to Devontae Adams. I think he's going to do the same thing with Metcalf because he doesn't have a choice, right? You look at the talent level from a wideout perspective, and I'm a huge DK Metcalf fan, and I know he's a little sloppy on his route running, but the guy is a beast, right? The way he can run, the way he can out-muscle everybody, and what I love about Metcalf is his attitude. He wants the ball. He wants to win. He never gives up. They can be down 20, and he's going to go and get a fist fight with a cornerback to go and win that ball.
This is true.
That's the kind of guys that I love. Is they want to be out there, and whether they're getting paid $1 or $10 million. And Metcalf's one of those guys. So, Pittsburgh, it's a tough city. It's a great city. I think they're going to embrace the way he plays football. And, yes, he's not going to get, a huge amount of targets, but I think, the way he doesn't have much competition for targets there, he's going to get enough. And, the way I've been getting him in the 4th or 5th round, that's a guy that's high on my list that I really like to go out there and, be that value in the mid rounds.
So I want to ask you about another receiver here too, and that's Jordan Addison. I've kind of made up my mind that I am in on the Vikings offense this year. In fact, I was talking last night on the Insider Access show on Better Sports Network with Dan Williamson, and he's a Minnesota guy, and I said I think I'm pretty much in on every Minnesota player this year except for Aaron Jones. I'm a little bit nervous about him, but Mason, Hockenson, Jefferson, Addison, McCarthy, yes, I will take those guys. And I want to focus in on Addison for this question, because I think some people are nervous about him being the number 2 wideout and maybe not even the number 2 target on a team that's featuring a rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. There's also the possibility of suspension. I look at both those things as buying opportunities for Addison right now, and I've been taking him, maybe to my own detriment, but I've been taking him. How do you feel, Jason, about Jordan Addison in drafts this year? I'll give you the mojo on him right now. Jordan Addison, on average in the Big Gorilla over the last 3 days, is going as wide receiver 38 at the 706.
I'll tell you what, I love Addison as a player from a talent standpoint, and you hit the nail on the head. Minnesota is one of the teams I target across the board. And the reason why is because I love Kevin O'Connell. The dude's going to throw the ball. He's an offensive genius. When you can put Sam Darnold in a position to put up great fantasy football numbers, anybody's going to do it. So I've got no worries about J.J. McCarthy and being able to get it down there, because you look at the past with Nick Mullins and all of the has-beens and never was that have played quarterback there, they still put up the numbers in that offense. And to make it even better is their defense stinks. I mean, they have to throw the ball. So, I'm with you on Aaron Jones. I'm passing on him way too high. I'll take Jordan Mason, Hawkinson. The thing with Addison, I think, like you said, Balky, it's the value, right? If it's low enough, you take it. What I do like about Addison is you could take, he's going to get suspended, but it's probably going to be the first 3 games. So if you get enough value on Addison with his talent, you get into the bye weeks, and that's when you're getting them back, right? So you might draft 4 receivers in front of them, and then you have Addison. Well, once you get into those bye weeks, now you got a 5th guy with a talent like that and a round with value that you would have never got before if this suspension wasn't looming over. And, the guy knows how to sniff the end zone. And, for me, it's especially when you're playing in a tournament like the Big Gorilla or the Main Event, you've got to get those guys. Don't worry about, those doubles. You got to get the guys with the high ceilings that can go off for 184 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns and win you that championship. Getting the league championship is one, and it's nice to put that money in your pocket, but to really have a chance, you have to hit those high ceiling guys as it comes together. Just like the guy who won the Main Event, right? Who had Higgins and Burrow, and they just went off in the right week, and there you go. He came from a couple spots down and jumped right up and won the $1 million.
Hey,
So
go ahead, Balky.
I just want to point out what Borgen Freeman is pointing out in the YouTube chat right now. And while I think he's right, mostly with this is when you're talking about Addison missing a quarter of the FFPC regular season, which he could. I think that's usually smart to bring up. However, to your point, with Addison's suspension, if it is at the start of the season, which I think a lot of people think it is going to be, JJ Zacharyson from late round, and then Jared Smoller from Draft Sharks, they say this all the time. The most fixable weeks, the most replaceable weeks that you have in fantasy football are those first few weeks of the season when everybody's healthy, mostly nobody's on bye. And Addison right now is wide receiver 38. I mean, he could be your number 4, perhaps even number 5 receiver. So if I'm without Addison those first few weeks, it's not ideal, but I can deal with it more as opposed to if it was Drake London or if it was, Tyreek Hill or Puka Nacua or any of these guys that you're counting on for big production. I'm not counting on much from Addison for the first few weeks, which I think gets back to our whole point here, Jason, that we're fine with the value of him. If he's there or lower, we're fine with it. If it gets a little bit higher than that, then I'm Borgen. I'm kind of with you at that point. Go ahead, Ferrell.
Well, Boogerman Freeman's coming in with something real strong there because, Balky, what you got to consider is that Addison just may not walk back into the lineup and start playing it the way he's always played. And that's the other thing when a player's coming off of suspension. I want to roll back to the first question. I want to be quick about it because we got a lot of good football stuff to talk about. But, when people ask me how I got in the sports business, I always try to boil it down. And a lot of young people studying sports management and that type of thing in college. What was your one break and I'm fascinated by all the different fields that you've worked in, but what was the one break that led you into working in professional sports?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I actually graduated with a business degree from Florida, not sports management or anything like that. And, it's once you get your foot in the door as an intern, and I started out interning with the Marlins making $800 a month. I had to get a second job just to be able to support myself for working 100 hours a week, but I worked at their spring training facility. I got some great exposure. And, the biggest thing, honestly, is work ethic. And Wayne Huizenga owned all 3 teams at the time when I was there. So as a 22-year-old, I got to meet Mr. Huizenga, and he saw how hard I worked. So if you see my career, we went to the World Series. Wayne sold the team there. He asked me to go over to the Dolphins, get ready for the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, he was building a new building, and he had me go over there. So it was really, you make
the one key that the key man in the organization saw your effort.
That's exactly right. As a young kid, and be the first one in the building, last one out. I mean, whether you're a player in the front office, it's no different, right? So
well, you were a young guy that did it right from day one. Let's talk about a guy in football that finally got it right last year. He's had some decent years, but he had his best year last year. And Balky knows the gentleman's name, but the tight end whisperer, our only pro that really got anything right last year. Is that right? Our only pro. The tight end whisperer came on and told us Hunter Henry was a great bargain. And Hunter Henry goes out and has his best year catching the football. Is that going to hold this year, especially with the wide receivers? I would think the addition of Diggs, the young player Williams that everyone seems to be high on coming in, that type of coverages that they will draw could allow Hunter Henry to have another big catch year. What do you think?
Yeah, and Hunter Henry is one of those guys that I have leaned on through fantasy football ever since he was a rookie back in the day with the Chargers, just because of the talent and his pass catching ability to go over the middle. And he's just solid. And it's one of those guys that we talked about. He's not going to be the triple and home run guy, but he's a single and double all day long. And I think with Drake May still being a young quarterback, a veteran that he knows he can throw the ball to underneath, and a guy who's going to break a few tackles, and he's got him, and I think Stephon Diggs is going to take a little bit of that away. That is kind of safety blanket for him. But other than that, really, I'm not impressed with the rest of the talent around there. You got Douglas, and you got a bunch of young guys who really haven't done much. I'm a huge fan of Drake May, the way he can run and just make plays happen. But I'm not going to take a whole lot of him, even though you can get him. He's still available in the Big Gorilla, or he just went, I think, in the 12th or 13th round. But there's other guys like Trevor Lawrence out there, and talking about quarterbacks, it's the value on quarterbacks this year in these early drafts are like none I've ever seen. You were just talking about Patrick Mahomes going in the 8th, right? He went in the 8-9 in this Gorilla. I'm in the slow draft right now. I got Kyler Murray at the 11.7. That's ridiculous. I kept waiting on him. And then I was just like, I was planning on taking Dak, and Kyler Murray was there at 11.7. I was like, well, I got to grab him. But back to your point at Hunter Henry, I think he's going to put up another solid year, maybe not as many catches, but, if you've got a guy, he's not going to be my first tight end, but, as another tight end, or if you're juggling two tight ends, a guy who's going to have 60, 65 catches for, 600-700 yards, and, he's going to get 5 to 7 touchdowns, and you can bank on that every year. And that's hard to beat at the tight end position.
Balky, what's Darren say about Hunter Henry?
Hunter Henry right now is as far as tight ends go. Over the last 3 days in the Big Gorilla, you're looking at tight end 21, so comfortably a backup tight end, almost a tight end 3 at this point. And if you want to draft him, he's going to cost you a 12th round pick. He's going at that 12-13 turn. Which
is essentially where he was last year before he had the best year he ever had. Correct.
Yeah, and obviously Diggs and Kyle Williams and Adam Hahn in YouTube mentions Kayshon Boutte, who I don't know if is a lock to make the team, but we know the talent is there as well. Jason, the Cowboys backfield. Let's play a little multiple choice. Have some fun here tonight. If I said, Jason, what's the ideal way to handle the Dallas Cowboys backfield this year? Would you say A, it's drafting Javonte Williams in the 9th round? B, it's drafting Jaden Blue in the 10th round? C, it's drafting Miles Sanders in the 16th round? D, Phil Maffa in the 20th? Or E, none of the above, avoid it completely? What would you answer to that question on how to properly handle Cowboys running backs in 2025?
I'll tell you what. So my choice is E, unless I really need running back in the 10th round, and then it's going to be A and take Javonte Williams. Okay. And that's one of the guys I've taken, but I'm taking him as my 4th or 5th running back. And, in that Gorilla League, like I talked about, I have actually those guys. I've got 4,000-yard rushers who've got a good chance at it. And, Javonte Williams is one of them. So, there's so much value there at running back in that, for me, I like to do hero RB, get one workhorse if I can, or I'll skip on it. And then I'll take one in the mid round. And then, I'll go 7, 8, 9, 10, all running backs if I need to. But I've got 4 or 5 really solid wide receivers, going back to Addison being maybe my 5th wideout. So I'm happy to build a roster from that, standpoint. And I know, this guy is saying, Everybody loves blue because everybody loves the shiny new penny until they can't block, right? They can't pass block, and you don't love blue anymore. And I'm not saying he can't, but how many rookies come in with that they think they're going to do something, but they just either can't pick up the playbook or they can't pass block, and then all of a sudden, I think any running back you get after the 11th round is, it's a shake. You're not counting on them to really bank your whole roster on. It's really those guys that you can hit, like, Trey Benson last year, some of those guys that you're an injury away, or Isaac Garendo that can really win you something. Maybe Blue is, but I don't see Blue ever being a workhorse.
Yeah. So
you like that Dallas backfield, though. You're eyeballing it.
My thing on the Dallas backfield, it's super cheap right now. They can't throw every down, I don't think. They may try to, but there's got to be some value there. And you heard it from Jason Camp here tonight. While you're taking the Jaden Blue, the shiny new penny that everybody loves, he has taken that beat up old dusty quarter in Javonte Williams and plugging him in his lineup when he has to in the Big Gorilla this season. Which,
Jason, I'm making a lot of the same moves you are. Why in the hell aren't I winning at your rate? That's what I have. I would like to have that question.
Well, and honestly, I think Dallas is much like I feel like it's Minnesota, right? The defense isn't nearly where it was before. I'll take Prescott. I'll take Lamb. I'll take Pickens. I'll take Ferguson. I'll take all those guys and barring injury, Dak's going to throw for 5,000 yards because he has to. They're going to be down and have to throw every single game. So I'm all over Minnesota and Dallas. And, they might only win 7 games, but he's going to throw for 5,000 yards.
What you guys are talking about, running backs, young running backs, last year. Balky, do you recall, because there was a lot of heat on Blake Corum. Remember, Kyron Williams was basically going to show him the door, and they were going to give the job to Blake Corum. Am I overstating that?
No, you're not, because I think a lot of if you remember back to last year, there's a lot of Kyron Williams non-believers last year, right? And if you were a Kyron Williams non-believer, you were going to pump up Blake Corum. Now, I can tell you, going into the Thursday night game, the opening Thursday night game in the FFPC main event last year, Blake Corum was, I got to spell his name right in order for Mojo to get this. By the way, there's another great thing about fantasymojo.com. We can look at ADPs from previous years. Blake Corum was running back 36. He was going in the 9th round. Okay. So he was a single-digit running back last year, coming in as a rookie. And he may or may not have been hurt at the time. I don't remember if he was hurt in the preseason. But that would have been another thing that was probably driving him down. But he was still a 9th round pick last year, Ferrell.
3.6 yards a carry. He had a big breakout game against the Saints when he rushed for 42 yards. And he had 2 other games that he rushed for double-digit yards. I mean, it was a rough year for Mr. Corum. And no touchdowns. He was going to be a beast. He was going to steal all the goal line touches. No touchdowns for Corum. Does what he did last year make you, if you are going to be with the Kyron Williams, what he did last year, are you going to look at another running back to handcuff with the Rams, or do you think Corum was just growing pains and he will emerge during this sophomore year?
I've actually never been a Corum fan. I don't. Well, one thing that I look at is, I watch these guys play and I do my own talent evaluation. And honestly, I was never impressed with him in college. I think he was good in the system, but you had a guy like Williams, and I got a lot of Williams, and I love taking another round and a half discount because everybody loved Corum, and all the talk was about Corum, and him coming in. But listen, coaches want to win, and they're going to put the best talent on the field. And yes, Williams has had some fumbling issues and all that, but he has produced. And you don't take a guy like that off the field when you need to win and games are on the line and put in a rookie. Again, there's pass blocking. There's a lot of things that you got to do to stay on the field. And it's not easy being a rookie in the NFL. So I'm happy for guys to, be all over Blue and be all over all these other guys and leave those veterans who keep producing to me on values and get them at, a round or a round and a half discount. Now, I say that, but I will say I do like Jaquez Hunter this year for the Rams because I think he is the real deal. And, he was drafted there for a reason. If you saw in their war room, they really wanted him. So I do think he's got some shine right now. In my Gorilla League, I'm coming up in the 13th round, and I'm either going to take Marshawn Lloyd or Hunter. And again, they're going to be my 6th running back, in the 13th round. So I'll take those guys all day long to fill in. And if they hit, and it's great. Or I get some injuries to Derrick Henry or some of the other guys on my roster. But, that's where I like to pick up those values of guys who can hit or they're catching it out of the backfield. And if not, you drop them for somebody else, in week 3 or 4.
We're 47 minutes in the show, Balky. 47 minutes in the show. And Jason just said something that shouldn't have been said. Derrick Henry and injury in the same sentence.
I know.
Just ridiculous. But, hey, you got a chance to bounce back.
We have used it in the same sentence before. It's usually like, oh, this guy got an injury trying to tackle Derrick Henry. That's usually how we use those two terms together. So I want to talk about Anthony Richardson. This is good because you're a Florida guy. With the Big Gorilla, I think a viable strategy would be to take an early round, like an elite, a top 5 quarterback, right? And then ignore the position until late, and then draft Anthony Richardson. And no harm, no foul if he doesn't pan out. If he's not the starter week 1 and you're in a pinch, you could probably move on from him if you wanted to. But I just feel like the upside of Richardson, not necessarily from an NFL standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint, I feel like he's slipping too far in drafts right now. How have you been handling him in your drafts? Have you been getting him late? Have you been ignoring him? What do you think is going to happen this season for Richardson?
Balky, there's no way I can ignore Anthony Richardson. AR is the guy. And again, watching him at Florida, and listen, I will not say he is not the best passer. And I have hope, kind of like Kyle Pitts, that at some point in time, these guys are going to get it because they have all the talent in the world. And I mean, just from it's getting back to our ceiling conversation, right? Daniel Jones, he will be fine for the team as, basically a game manager. But from a fantasy, I want nothing to do with Daniel Jones. He'll never be on any of my rosters. But to my point, Richardson's almost free now. He has fallen so far, but he's still down on that bottom where he could – I mean, does anybody on this call think he couldn't be a top 5 quarterback if he wins the job and plays just okay as a passer? He's got more weapons with Tyler Warren and, I mean, with Pittman and Josh Downs and all of those guys – he's got talent all around him. He just has to start hitting those touch passes. I mean, he's got this, one of the strongest arms in the league. He has all of the tools there. And if it just starts clicking for him, I mean, again, talk about league winners. And I don't care if you have, Patrick Mahomes or anything else. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I told you I got Kyler Murray at the 11-7. I'm absolutely taking Richardson in 3 or 4 rounds when he's still there. And he should be because there's 7 good quarterbacks, including Trevor Lawrence, and you got Tua and all that. And with Murray, I don't need any of those guys. It's like I might punt and just have Murray because there's going to be guys on the waiver wire that are solid picks for that bye week 8 that Arizona's on a bye. But Richardson actually has a great matchup in that week 8 also. So I'm going to grab him if he's still there in those rounds. And to me, it's just crazy somebody doesn't take it at that lottery ticket.
Ferrell, I think our good buddy Tupacker has dubbed Trevor Lawrence Sunshine, which was the nickname of the quarterback Ronnie Bass in the Disney movie Remember the Titans. He called him Sunshine because of his looks. I think the true sunshine in the NFL might be Anthony Richardson. As Denzel Washington put it so eloquently in that movie, he could throw the ball a country mile, but he couldn't make that little pitch to the running back. Richardson just struggles with that little touch. He might be the real sunshine from a physical standpoint in the NFL too. But if he can ever figure that out, wheels up for Richardson. And because so many people got burned on him in the past, myself included, there's going to be a lot of people that will just be like, I'm done with Richardson. I'm not touching him again, which makes him an interesting buy right now and could make him an interesting buy later on in this season or maybe after the 2025 season as well. Just my 2 cents on Anthony Richardson as long as we're talking about him. I want to talk pros versus Joes here, Ferrell, with one of the Joes this year. Jason Camp, initials JC, the same as Jesus Christ. Is he the savior for the Joes this year?
The Joes need no savior, but if they were going shopping one, this is who we would come up with. You show up against the pros, you're guaranteed sixth place. So, what you've got to do is tell us what your strategy is to beat the other Joes.
Yeah, and then write it down and use it against me, right? Well, I mean, from a strategy perspective, and like I said, I don't think it's any different. I think we're all kind of on a level playing field. I know the pros think, differently, but from my standpoint, it all depends on that draft position of how I'm going to play, where it goes. To me, I don't go in with a certain spot. If I know where I'm drafted, whether I'm going to go that workhorse running back and then fill it in with, 4 or 5 wide receivers right after that. If one of those top 4 quarterbacks falls to me, like I've seen, some of these guys with Jalen Hurts, and I'm a huge Jaden Daniels fan, and you can match him up with Terry McLaurin, or I really like Debo. Same thing. I think he's fallen too far for the talent that he has going on a Washington team that's going to score a ton of points. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So, me, ideally, I'd like to go workhorse and then a bunch of wide receivers right around it if I can get those. But, if somebody's splitting the backfield, then I'll wait. And, maybe your first guy is Kenny Walker or one of those guys in that 5th or 6th round where I think he's got some upside. But then, like I said, that 7 through 11, I'll take all those running backs that I think like Javonte Williams that can hit. And, these guys are still going to, still have a chance of being 1,000-yard rushers or one injury away from getting there and really, padding it in. But like I said, the quarterback value right now is kind of crazy. That even the top guys are falling into the 3rd, 4th round. There's big opportunities there. It's been an interesting year in the early drafts, to be honest.
Yeah, that's why that big gorilla is so much fun. And, you're letting out your secrets, and everybody's got a secret weapon at home. Hey, Balky, I wanted to give a shout out to Bill Hollywood tonight, who's not in the chat, but the shout out doesn't go so much to Bill as it does his brother Dave. And there's Bill's secret weapon. Dave, the older brother, is sitting at home stirring up all the ADPs, and we might get him down in Louisville this year if he can hop in with old Billy Hollywood. I love your strategy. What would it do for you if you won it? If you won the pros versus Joes, where would you set that trophy?
Oh, man. Do you see this? Right here, I'd have a shelf right here. For every single one of my conference calls, when I'm calling Raising Canes and those guys to come to Camp Landing, they would see my trophy right here and automatically know I was a winner.
I love it.
We have a question on YouTube. We're going to go to Ray C. I don't think we've talked about him at all in the program tonight, but he wants to know our thoughts on DeAndre Swift this year. And Jason, I think this is a player that I just fully expected him to sort of lose his job, or at least lose his role in the draft this year, and it never happened. We've heard the stories of people pontificating whether the Bears were trying to get a replacement for him, but that player just would always get picked right before they were ready to pick. And so they end up with Kyle Monangai in the 7th round, who's he's a fine running back out of Rutgers, nothing special, at least in my opinion. So it seems like Swift, it's still his job, and he's still ahead of Roshan Johnson. If we look at the mojo on DeAndre Swift right now in the Big Gorilla over the last 3 days, we're seeing him as running back 24 at the 606. This has gradually ascended since the end of the draft, in which a lot of people think he survived it. But Jason, do you think he survived it? Do you think that it's still his job? Do you think that they'd still look at adding somebody later on in the season? I don't know, or later on in the offseason, or is it just wheels up for Swift in this offense run by Ben Johnson this year?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not a huge believer in Swift, and I think the organization has done way too much to not give me confidence that he is. I think there could be, a high value trade of just, a 6th or 7th round pick, and you get more of a veteran in there. You sign some of those guys, just like Kareem Hunt last year, right? Those guys getting on teams where they know what to do. They can get the hard yards. Swift's fine. And honestly, in that 6th round, it's not terrible. For me, he would have to be in the 7th or 8th for me to look at him. there, just because I don't believe, also with all the pass catchers and with Luther Burden and with Loveland going in there, I think they're going to let Caleb, throw a little bit more. And I think he's going to have a little more structure under the new coaching system that they have there. So, I love what they have going on through the air. And, it's just one of those, I think Swift is a game manager, right? He's not going to win you a lot of games. So going back to in leagues like this, you need those guys that, are you ever going to see Swift do 140 yards and catch 8 passes in a game and 2 touchdowns? No. And so I normally will just pass on Swift. I don't believe it. And I am taking, Managai and Roshan Johnson just because, again, looking in those back teen rounds, what's the loss? It's okay taking the risk there.
Ferrell, I'm going to, in the interest of time here, and Jason and I exchanged a few emails. I know that this could be a lengthy discussion for this final question. So let's set it up with this final question for Jason tonight.
All right, final question. And before we do that, Caleb Williams could get the Esquire magazine curse. But and there was a great question coming here from BK Sports Cards of America. But I digress. One of the most important things you said tonight is I do my own valuation. Thank you for that. Thank you. That is, and I can tell you watch a lot of college football, so you know a lot of these players and you know them early. That's when you tell me a player you don't like. It has some meaning. It doesn't. It says you're not necessarily holding a grudge against that player for past fantasy football disappointments. So give me somebody that's not going to be on your squad, and then give us someone, perhaps the best sleeper you can, that someone should go out and roster in their 20-round draft.
So a couple of guys that you won't really find on my roster unless they fall so far, and I know they won't in any of my things, Rashee Rice. And I know a lot of people are on him. For me, it's kind of getting back to the Addison discussion. There's certain guys in the NFL who just find trouble, right? And Rice has done it, whether it's injury or behavior or those kind of things. And for me, I don't like taking the risk that midseason the guy's out at a party, does something wrong, and he's gone for the rest of the year, or he's got negative media, which is going to bring his performance down. And listen, again, Dolphins are great. I grew up there. My dad was a season ticket holder from the inception. But Tyreek Hill getting arrested and put on the ground, and, he didn't have a great year. And, Tyreek finds trouble. He always has, from college all the way on. So for me, there's plenty of guys out there, and I'll take the Jaden Daniels, who's a good dude and loves his mama and, says all the right things, and honestly just is in love with football and is not worried about the other side outside of the stadium that might get him in trouble. I mean, why take a guy like Rice when I can take other players that are going to put up the same numbers? And then you look at, there's a lot of pass catchers in KC.
Yes.
So, with Xavier Worthy, and you still got Kelsey, and, Noah Gray's got some serious talent. Kelsey's taking breaks, and, Hollywood Brown, and, he's far from the one guy like DK Metcalf that's going to get 30% of the targets. So I know he's a good talent, but he's a guy I'm not going to take.
And here's a question for you, a follow-up question. How many years do you think we will continue to say they still have Kelsey? That's the quote.
I think we're a decade away from that. We're a decade away from being done with that.
Well, I think it's whatever Taylor Swift tells him that he's done.
Oh, no.
I'll bring this up too. I know you're off of Brandon Ayuk. I know you're off of Alvin Kamara. What I really want to do here for a real grinded out question to close it out. Who do you like best between Darnell Mooney, Cedric Tillman, and Jacoby Myers this year?
Oh, that's easy.
Not for Jason.
No, it's easy.
Well, it's if we were looking at straight stats, it would be Jacoby Myers. But what round I'm taking him in, honestly, it's Mooney or Tillman. They're right there, because you saw what Tillman could do when given the chance until he got hurt and had that concussion. Again, a team that's going to be down a lot, although they have a good defense, they don't have much else. They've got the rookie running back coming in. So I'm taking Tillman in a lot of drafts because, where you're taking him in the 14th, 15th, 16th, that's hard to beat. Mooney's going – I actually just took him in the Gorilla, I think in the 11th. That's great value there. And I really like Jacoby Myers. He's going to be super solid, but you got to grab him in, 7th, 8th. So to me, that all goes back to value. I'll take some of those other guys in the 7th and 8th and still take Mooney in the 10th or Tillman, in the 13th.
Ferrell, who would you say, since you said it was easy?
I've always loved Mooney's skill set, and last year, 64 catches, 1,000 yards, 5 TDs. He finally hit it. So under those set of numbers, I would probably lean Mooney because, we talked about the fact that we don't know if the Raiders can support a first-round running back, a second-round tight end, and a seventh-round receiver.
It's true. It's very true.
And Penix, Penix is going to throw the ball, and he's on my list paired up with Murray because in bye week 8, Atlanta's hosted Miami, and Miami's secondary is going to be one of the worst in the league. So target that every chance you can get in those shootout games with Miami. And so speaking of one of the guys I love, you had mentioned, I think Waddle has fallen way too far down the way. They're going to have to throw the ball all the time. And where he's going in drafts now, that is one of the biggest values on the board, not only with his talent level, what they signed him to a contract, the way Tua's able to throw the ball, and with McDaniel's offense. But same thing, Tyreek Hill could be traded. He could be hurt. All of that talk about Tyreek Hill getting traded, say he gets traded tomorrow, where's Waddle going in the next day's drafts?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
3rd round, top of the 3rd, and you're getting him, way late. It's just he's fallen just way too far.
I think the thing with Waddle is I was drafting him early on, and I feel bad about it because I've been one of the people that are letting him slip, and I just looked at his ADP for the Big Gorilla the last 3 days. He has fallen to Chris Olave, Jerry Jeudy, Jawan Jennings, Rome Odunze territory. Jalen Waddle is wide receiver 35 in the 7th round of the Big Gorilla right now. There is say what you could hate the Miami Dolphins offense and still like that ADP there too.
Exactly.
So,
that's value a number one. So he's one of the guys that I'm targeting that far. That's nutso.
And Morgan Freeman, it points this out. He's disappointed him too many times. Good luck. I get it. Like I've been burned by players before. I try to wash and cleanse myself of that every year. So I'm
no grudges, Balky. No grudges.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to just have all that stink off me from the previous season, and I want to come in fresh and look at it fresh. But you're not paying the premium that you were paying in the past when Waddle burned you. You're paying 7th round.
All those other names you mentioned. Did Chris Olave disappoint you? It's like everybody around Waddle, they all disappoint. That's why they're in the 7th round for a reason.
Right. Yeah.
And Pittman won't disappoint you, and he's in the 11th round.
Yes.
Gosh, I got it in. Yeah. We only have a minute left of the show.
We contractually obligated to praise Michael Pittman at least once during every program, so we got it in. It's like a live read, right, Ferrell? That we just have to get it in. We have to wedge it in somehow. And it's always tough when you get a great guest like Jason Camp tonight, the 12-time FFPC league winner, a guy who's going to be drafting live on these airwaves in about a month for the FFPC Pros versus Joe's challenges. He's going for a free FFPC main event team in 2026. But before that, he wants to go for the $1 million in the 2025 FFPC main event. J Camp 2323 is where to go. If you want to check out what he's doing in his spare time, when he's not doing this hobby of winning all these high stakes leagues, check out camplanding.com. And what was the other? Tap Time Sports? Am I getting that right?
TapThatSports.com.
Tap That Sports. TapThatSports.com. 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 Jason, this was a lot of fun. Really enjoyable Friday night we got to spend with you. We'll work on KFFSC Eastern Kentucky, the satellite. Over in Ashland. I'm down for that. Don't be a stranger. Hopefully we get a chance to talk to you real soon. Maybe you can come on the air when you're drafting and make a pick live. We'd love to reconvene and talk with you then too.
I would love to, guys. Thanks for having me. That
is Jason Camp, ladies and gentlemen, hanging out with us tonight here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the 12-time FFPC league winner. What a fun conversation that was, Ferrell. And we might have booked a new location for KFFSC. Who knew?
Yeah,
you never know what we're going to get into.
we're going to have to get him over here where he can inspect the operation and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He'll likely have some good ideas, and I got to figure he'll bring some of those guys with him. But you know what? He just might want to take a break and come on over and be with us.
That'd be fun as well. Fun for him, fun for us, fun for everybody to do that as well. I'm going to let you have a fun weekend, Ferrell. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. July 4th is next Friday, so we're not doing a show. Are you available to do a show on Wednesday night? Would you be able to do a show Wednesday night the 2nd?
Balky, if you want to do a show Wednesday night, I'm here.
All right, you're the man. Let's plan on that, 10 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Be good, brother. Talk to you soon. That is Ferrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, KFFSC.com. I've been in a bunch of KFFSC drafts this year so far already, having a blast. I've been drafting against some of the guys in the YouTube chat tonight, like Steven Ugalos, who has been in like 3 or 4 of mine already. It's been a lot of fun. I want to remind you, once again, next week, Wednesday, we'll be doing a show 10 p.m. Eastern time. So you can watch the fireworks on Friday night. You don't have to worry about missing a show. In case you missed last night's episode of the Insider Access Show on the Better Sports Network, I had a great time with Dan Williamson. He's the co-host of the Stack Hunters podcast with Bradley Stalder. He also writes for Player Profiler, Roto Underworld. We had a great time discussing a lot of players and a lot of draft strategy on that show. Watch it back on the Better Sports Network's website, BSN Socials, FFPC Socials. You can check that out. We will go live again this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. for 2 full hours. We're going to go back to the Player Profiler. Well, he's a writer there. He also is a contributor for Dynasty League Football and Fantasy Alarm. He is the host of press coverage on the Player Profiler podcast network. His name is Wyatt Bertolone, and he is going to be joining me live on Thursday. Going to be a fun one. This coming Tuesday, which is July 1st, we will also be going live with the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the July edition, with the multi-time champion in both the FFPC and the KFFSC, Vince Staffolino. He's going to be coming back on that show. Excited to talk to him because he's a Joe in the Pros versus Joes this year as well. So we'll get his thoughts on that. And he's drafted in it before, so he's going to have some insight on what we're going to see in the next month. FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament is where you want to be joining right now. $1 million grand prize, $50 off every third entry fee for every third team you buy. 7 Bananas promo is live. Check that out at myffpc.com. You can join the FFPC main event as well and go for a separate $1 million grand prize there. Remember that if you have your teams bought and paid for by July 27th, you're going to get your early draft slot on August 3rd. myffpc.com is where to go for that. Slow drafts, obviously off and running every single day. Live drafts are going on the weekend. Live main event tomorrow night. So join that if you so choose to do so. FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball Tournament available at myffpc.com. $300,000 and $100,000 grand prizes there. You're looking at $125 and a $35 entry respectively for those contests. We added a $100,000 runner-up prize in the Best Ball Tournament this year. So check that out. It's going to be never been as lucrative to play it as it is now. Dynasty, of course, we're going to have those going on throughout the summer as well. Dynasty startups, myffpc.com has 2,000 plus Dynasty leagues over the last 15 years. None have ever folded. That is where to go, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week with yours truly all 3 nights. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully you can join us for that. Thank you so much for watching. For Ferrell Elliott, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I am not commissioning it tonight, but we do have spots still open in the midnight Big Gorilla draft going on tonight. That's going to get underway in about 45 minutes or so. So if you want to take your shot at $1 million, you can hang out tonight with Bryce as your commissioner and do that. I'll see you in the draft rooms this weekend, though, for sure. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Appreciate all the support and the continued support you give us. Get out there and win $1 million this year, maybe a couple of $1 million grand prizes. I'll see you in the draft rooms. Talk to you on Tuesday.